our conversation segment this morning, we shall focus on the Nigerian worker who is being honored with a public holiday today by looking into issues around the welfare and well-being of the workforce. And of course, to lead us into the conversation, here is Abdul Salam Jibril with a background report.
As Nigerian workers join their counterparts across the world to mark this year's Workers' Day, issues of poor welfare and the current challenges of insecurity took center stage. Presently, the Judiciary Staff Union of Nigeria, JUSUN, Parliamentary Staff Association of Nigeria, PASAN, and the Academic Staff Union of Polytechnics, ASUP, are currently on strike over improved welfare packages. During the May Day celebrations, workers and labor leaders across sectors of the economy lamented the refusal by some state governors to pay workers the 30,000 naira national minimum wage, unresolved industrial disputes, and the controversial bill before the National Assembly to move the national minimum wage from the exclusive legislative list to the concurrent list. Notwithstanding the issue of salary disparity among parastatals and agencies of government is also of concern to the Nigerian workforce. Considering the harrowing conditions the COVID-19 pandemic put workers through, the organized labor is demanding the listing of occupational health and safety as a fundamental right at work and recognition of COVID-19 as a workplace disease with adequate compensation for workers. Labor is also against the haphazard implementation of the minimum wage against the background of rising inflation. The federal government, on its part, assured the Nigerian workforce of its commitment to the deployment of enormous resources towards promoting decent work standards across various sectors, particularly in the education and health sectors. Government has also given assurance that post-COVID-19 palliative measures and social protection are in the works for Nigerian workers. With the myriad of challenges facing Nigerian workers, what more can be done to improve their welfare and working conditions? These issues will engage guests on the program shortly.
All right, thank you very much, Abdul Salam, there for that background. With us in the studios now to discuss matters to this issue, let's welcome the Honorable Minister of Labour and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige. Honorable Minister, pleasure to have you this morning.
Thank you, Kingsley. Thank you, viewers.
Also here with us in the studios, we'd like to welcome distinguished Senator Ibrahim Hadeja. He represents Jigawa Northeast and is a member of the Senate Committee on Labour. Senator, delighted to have you this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
And then also here with us in the studios, Honorable Sergius Ogun. Honorable Sergius Ogun, of course, represents Eastern Northeast and Southeast Federal Constituency in Edo State. Delighted to have you, Honorable Sergius.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Kieran.
And from the side of Labour, we have in the studio Comrade Ismail Bello, Acting General Secretary of the Nigeria Labour Congress, NLC. Many thanks to have you here this morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Nigerians. Happy midday to Nigerian workers.
All right, and from our Lagos studio, we are being joined by Dr. Timothy Olawole, Director General, Nigeria Employers Consultative Association. Sir, you're also welcome to the program.
Morning. Thank you very much.
All right, gentlemen, once again, I'd like to have you with us this morning. Let's begin with the Honorable Minister of Labour and Employment. Is the welfare of the Nigerian worker still a priority item for the government? And if so, how?
Yeah,
I think this question have its answer already. If you look at the labor landscape you will see what the government have been doing. This government have been very labor friendly. When we came, the government earnings took a tumble down. It's not our fault. Previous governments in Nigeria have not diversified the economy. We relied on oil, mono economy, and oil was the main source of revenue. Just like you have some other countries, Venezuela, Angola, and the rest of them. So when we came in 2015, not long after, oil moved from $100 a barrel and nosedived. 60, everybody thought it was a joke. It moved down to 40. And coincidentally at the same time, the militancy in the Niger Delta erupted. Some people said the son of the soil, that's President Jonathan, was not allowed to do a second term. And so pipelines were being burst, damaged, platforms where oil workers go to, damaged. So again, our OPEC quota of 2.5 million barrels a day moved from 2.5 million to 1.5, 1, and at a certain point in 2016, it was 700,000 barrels a day. So you can see the drastic cuts. Price per barrel, 1/3. Output, 1/3. So what it means, arithmetically, is that your earnings have been reduced by 66 to 10%. You only earn 33 1/3. But even with that and our entering recession and everything, government said we won't retrench anybody. The government kept the workers. And at the same time, state governments were finding it difficult to pay. Government gave them bailouts immediately. And this is a government that is now earning 33%. We gave them budget support for the states, again, so that the state can be afloat. Federal government never owed any of our workers, and we never retrenched. If anything, recruitment was going on. In the police, in the public service, government corporations, parastatals, and even in main core civil service. That's one aspect of government encouragement to the workers. We moved again and said we will do a minimum wage so that we can protect the lowest worker, the worker in on grade level 1, step 1. That is the man you see cutting grass outside, or who is a cleaner, or who is a porter, that we needed to give him good living by putting a floor. So that minimum wage discussion took us 1 year plus, to be frank, because we wanted to do good work. It was a tripartite plus arrangement. Tripartite plus in labor balance means you have government on one tripod, you have employers of labor, you have the workers themselves. And we brought in some people who are not part of this tripartite. So that is why you have the word plus. Miss Hama Pepo is not a worker anymore. She chaired. Governors Forum nominated one governor per one geopolitical zone. Rauf Areboshala Obeni represented the Southwest governors. Rocha Sokorocha represented Southeast governors. Yeson Wike represented South-South governors. Simon Lalong represented North Central. Dankwambo, Northeast, and Northwest. I can't remember who was Northwest now, but they were all represented. So we discussed, and we moved the minimum wage from 18,000 to 30,000, 66% increase. And we did also now say, labor centers with your negotiating council, go and negotiate in the states, because there must be a consequential review, a consequential adjustment, because you have moved the man who is on step one, GL1 step 1, from 18 to 30,000. That movement have impinged on somebody who was on grade level 6 and was earning that 30,000. So you must do a consequential movement for that other person. So in a way, the pay package for the workers increased by the consequential review. Even though it's not a wage fixing thing or salary review, but there was an increase in salary all over. So this is the position with the law and what we have done as government. And of course, we have encouraged the workers. We are paying them promotion areas that we owe them. We are promoting them. No stagnation on promotion anymore. We are paying them end academic allowances, which you see ASU, on ASU banding all the time. They will hold it up and say, oh, they were owing us billions. But those billions and those agreements were done in 2009 and reviewed in 2013 again. So it is not this government that entered those agreements with them. And I want it to be clear. It's not us. But government is a continuum.
Exactly. All right,
But it's a continuum, and now when the pocket has gone a little bit dry, their own pocket, they are now looking for debtors all over. That is why you see all this spate of industrial unrest, and it's economic. It's the pocket. Purchasing power.
I was actually going to come to that, because you have enumerated, all that this government did since 2015 to better the lots of Nigerian worker. These are clear facts, that we all followed from then till now.
Thank you.
I'm glad that you mentioned that governors also were represented during the discussion on the issue of a minimum wage.
Yes.
But it's also clear today that some governors are not paying that minimum wage today.
Yes.
Well, we read you in the paper that you said the government is going to take action. But before that, we've had several industrial actions within this period. And we've been in the center of all that in terms of negotiation
Yes.
on behalf of the federal government. Tell us how it's been, because I know it's been a kind of experience for you.
It's not a tea party. You already know it. The negotiations go into midnight, sometimes early morning. But it's my own job. I don't have to run away from it. The mandate of my ministry. So we were doing it, and it's not been easy. And like I told you, those agreements were not entered into by this government, especially those on those accumulated allowances. It's not been entered by this government. Then the economy took a tumble, like I told you much earlier. The man who was earning 2.5 million barrels a day, multiplied by $100, multiplied by 30 days in a month, multiplied by 12 months. That's what was being earned before. And I said today, we're earning, today the biggest we are doing is 1.5 million barrels, times 40, 50, 60, there's an oscillation. In fact, COVID came, we couldn't sell for 2 months. Our oil was stored, and we had to pay for storage. We had to pay for storage. You couldn't sell. Then 30 days, multiply it, 1/3. So the money is not even there, but we are being pummeled. You must pay me, you must pay me. Government has entered this agreement. So when I look at the agreement, I negotiate for staggered payment of those allowances. Why is it staggered? I have to stagger it because you have to wait for the revenue to be dropping, and as they are dropping, you pay. That's why when you look at some of the agreements, you will see I put timelines on them, and those timelines are sometimes is like we're getting moratorium. I would say, we pay you this now. After 3 months, after 4 months, you get this, because the finance ministers have advised me. I work in tandem with her and the accountant general, and so it's a kind of financial engineering. You got to bring it in there, and then get peace. But we are paying. That's the important thing, and we're not defaulting in most of those payments. And the workers themselves know that instead of asking them to go home, instead of doing what we call redundancy in the Trade Dispute Act, by which you can call your workers, show them your books, financial books, and say, you are 1,000, I'm cutting you down to 500. I will pay you off and this and that. We didn't want to do that. It will inflict more pains to families.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Chris Ngige, Honorable Minister of Labour and Employment. Let's bring in now Senator Ibrahim Hadeja, who is a member of the Senate Committee on Labour. We earlier introduced him. Distinguished Senator, against the backdrop of some of the challenges that we have had with our macroeconomic environment, and the plenitude of industrial actions by various unions, plus declining purchasing power of the Nigerian worker, what is the attitude of the National Assembly, in particular the Senate, to the welfare and well-being of the Nigerian worker today?
Well, obviously, just like the Honorable Minister said, the Senate is also an arm of government. And I think, by and large, the sentiment is that, we need to be pro-labor. We need to support Nigerian workers within available resources. The fact of the matter is that, just like you mentioned, the macroeconomic situation is very, very dismal. And, sometimes when these negotiations are taking place, what I expect from labor is some empathy. It's one thing to say we want our workers to be paid X amount, but I think we cannot detach ourselves from reality. We have a mono economy. We've tried over several administrations to see that we deregulate. Yes, we've achieved some success in that rate. ICT and the service industry contribution to GDP is getting better. But some of the things that we need to do to ensure that we bring our head above water, you find that it's also looked at very negatively from the labor side. When you are talking about taxes, you say, no, you want to increase taxes. We have, the worst tax to GDP ratio in Africa. We are well below half of what the regional average is at 6.1%. When we talked about looking at other sources, maybe increase VAT, again, you meet resistance. We're probably the only country in Africa with a single-digit VAT rate. Everybody is moved up from 12, 15, some 20%. You have to ask yourself, where is this money going to come from? You can't give what you don't have. So, I think, based on the economic realities and the peculiar situation we found ourselves, the security situation, which is taking a huge chunk of our budget. Without security, you can't work. And then last year, we had Corona. Nobody invited COVID. It came, devastated the global economy, of which Nigeria belongs. And, in fact, people are expressing surprise that we've actually managed to exit recession so early, while bigger Western economies are still negative, whatever. So I think, by and large, within available resources, the government has tried. If you look at, our recurrent, recurrent expenditure budget is about 6-something%. And when you look at that, look at performance, that recurrent at 68% is the only side of the budget that is performing above 90%. The small capital of 30%, by the time you apply it, because you have to pay workers, we're still hovering around 52%. So it's a chicken and egg situation. Do we wait till the economy improves before we begin to look at this thing, and or do we pander to the demands, and you know, by the time you get to a point where you know, the current expenditure is hitting 80%, who are we working for? Workers, labor is there to serve the Nigerian people. If the only thing left for Nigerians is 20% of the budget, then you know, we need to have a rethink.
Yeah, but gentlemen, there's no gainsaying the fact that globally speaking, that the Nigerian worker will not be said to have the best of welfare. You know, considering the fact all the facts that you just mentioned, the economy, coronavirus, and other reasons you have just said. But the idea here is that a worker is a worker, and a worker requires his wages and other allowances that he requires to be able to cope with his own family, because of course we all go to the same market, we all have the same needs, we all pay school fees and what have you. So let me bring in a labor man here now, the acting general secretary of the Nigerian Labour Congress. Currently, before the National Assembly is a bill to remove the national minimum wage from the exclusive list to the concurrent list, and Labour is kicking against that. So what is the implication of this for the Labour?
Yeah, maybe before, once again, good morning. Before I move into that, let me underscore the significance of May Day, which is about the resilience of working people in the face of adversity, in the face of oppression. And that is what we celebrate on May Day. Having said that, I think there are quite a number of issues that has been raised by the distinguished senator. Empathy. Empathy for who? For the working people or for the political class? For me, is something that we need to think very deeply about. If you look at the condition of the Nigerian worker in the context of this macroeconomic reality, in the context of inflation, in the context of unemployment. Currently, we have inflation hovering around 22.5. Unemployment around
just under 19%.
17?
Under 19%, the latest figures.
Even at
18 point something percent.
Even at 19%.
Under 18%.
Even at 19%.
Double digit.
Yeah.
Even 18%. Whatever figure we want to take, is still very high. And it shows that the income, the meager income of the worker is really eroded. And we are talking of consistent 2-digit inflation over the last 3-4 years. So you can imagine the reality in terms of the real income of the worker. I'm not talking of the nominal income now. Yes, under this administration will move from 18 to 30. But if you want to see what could 18 do, what could 30 do? What was 18 doing 5, 6, 7 years ago? What is 30 doing in terms of putting food on the table of the average worker? The Nigerian worker is completely worse off. Worse off, yes, we must also admit, government is a big body. The federal, the state, the local government. To some measure, some level of responsibility in terms of management of labor issues at the federal level. No retrenchment, consistent payment of salary, commendable. But can we really say that, because Nigeria is not just a part, it's a whole? Can we say that with several of our state governments that renege on agreements, that are not even paying the 30,000, that cannot deliver the worker from poverty, from penury? ILO did a study under COVID, and they were talking of the working poor. And that's our reality. People are working, yet they are poor. You go to many workplaces, you meet security men, you meet cleaners, you meet all these categories of workers. They salute you 10 times. The expectation is that you are going to bring out something to augment their income.
A palliative.
Yes, so to say. People come to work, they see the GM in NTA, okay? They will greet him 3 times because they are not sure of returning home. Take a worker who lives on 30,000 and works with NTA and lives in Suleja or lives in Yanya. he commutes to get to the city center daily for 22 days. Take a count of that. There's no way from Yaya you will not spend 1,000 naira without a cook, without a gala. So that is the reality of the Nigerian worker. And that's why I ask the question, who deserves empathy? The Nigerian working people or the political class? I think the Nigerian workers deserves a lot of empathy. We know that the world is facing a lot of challenges. We are not alone in this. But what is different is the way each and every country responds to its own challenges. And we can't overcome this challenge except we take care of the need of the working people, to improve the productivity of the working people. And we cannot be doing this in an atmosphere of insecurity, which is the biggest challenge that is confronting Nigeria, that is confronting all of us. And that's why, as part of this media activity, the Nigerian Labour Congress organized a summit, purely to look at the security situation and the implication for us as workers, for our safety, for our well-being. In Borno, in Kaduna, across the country, particularly in Borno, you have teachers, local government employees, nurses. Several thousands have lost their lives. The same thing is happening in the north, in the west, in the northwest. Farmers can't go to farm. If things continue this way, we are at the verge of total hunger. That's the truth. So there's beyond the COVID and the consequences of economic challenges that's fostered in our nation. It's also the self-inflicted injury of our inability to manage our security situation. And we need to quickly address that. And on top of this, it's also the know-it-all attitude of many of our governors. Take Kaduna, for instance. We are talking of insecurity. You want to throw away 5,000 workers. You want to retire people at 50. You want to, without any measure, without any discussion. The Honorable Minister is here. He just reconstituted the National Labour Advisory Council. What is the essence of the National Labour Advisory Council? Bring all the parties together. Let's look at issues. Let's look at, even if we are coming up with a policy, it talks about VAT, it talks about taxes. These are things that you don't throw at people. These are things that we should discuss, we should sit down, discuss, harmonize, and say, okay, we will improve salary this way, we will come in this way, we'll do this way. That's the way policies are made. So that all the critical stakeholders in the nation will have an input into that process. I think it's very important. Not a situation where a governor will wake from the wrong side of his bed and he comes up with a policy that I need to chunk away 3,000 workers. I need to reduce the working age in violation of even extant laws and rules and policies. So I think there's a big problem. And as organized labor, we will dare and we will confront this headlong. The same thing in Imo. We have a governor who does not want to see organized labor, who wants to act unilaterally, locks up the office of our colleagues in the NSC State Council in Imo State. That's not the way to go in the face of the kind of challenge that we are facing as a nation. This is the time for dialogue. This is the time to talk over issues, whatever those issues are. This is not the time to act unilaterally and further provoke the kind of situation of insecurity that we see that does not allow maximum contribution to be able to take us out of this wood that we find ourselves in as a nation. So it's a very difficult period for working people, and we can only hope that government will create the enabling environment to drive the economy back to fruition, to drive the economy back to benefit the larger number of our people.
All right, Comrade Ismail, thank you very much. I know that my colleague Kirian asked about the proposal to move the national minimum wage from the exclusive to the concurrent list. We'll return to that subject matter later on in the course of the conversation. But let's bring in now Honorable Sejo Sogun. Honorable Ogun, what's your reading of the state and status of the Nigerian worker as at today, against the background of whatever metrics you may wish to use?
Well, I do feel for the Nigerian workers. When you say 30,000 naira minimum wage, I don't really believe anybody earns 30,000 naira in Nigeria. Well, for my brother here, the labor man, I feel your pain. But I also think there are so many things the government can do. Honestly, I don't like being in a program with honorable ministers. because I know they want to protect the government in which they serve and all that. You know, when I heard the minister talking, it just spoiled my mood this morning. Talking about how the federal government bailed out the state and all that. These were the state governments that came through 2015 election. Like Gemade, Senator Gemade has this, is it montage or what you call it, about governors spending money as if there is no, as if like water or as if they are printing money. Those are the same governors that we come out and we say that the federal government bailed them out. And then we go back and talk about how that price of crude oil dropped in 2014, 2015. I mean, are we morons in this country? You are coming into government. What is your plan? When I hear these things, I'm very irritated. You know, I sit down here and say, okay, well, the problem of this country today, Buhari is not the problem of this country, but he's part of the problem. He's been in government, he served as a minister, under the military, served as a governor, he came as a head of state, and then he came back as president. So what did they come to the table with? When you campaign to say you want to come and rule a country, what did you come with? With the mindset that price of crude oil is going to remain $100 per barrel. In any case, it was never $100 per barrel. It was average. There were times, Google it, there were times under the Jonathan or even Yar'Adua administration that it was 70-something, was 90-something. There was even a time it dropped to 40-something. If you read the Untitled story when he talked about, they was almost going to commit suicide. So when I hear this thing about the price of oil, crude oil dropped, so you were handicapped. So what did you come into government with? And you say you're going to change the lives of Nigerians. You know, but the unfortunate thing is that the Nigerian workers are the ones bearing the brunt of all this. Because you have a government that doesn't have foresight to plan for the workers or to plan for Nigerians. Actually, we are talking about crimes everywhere, we are talking about insecurity. So I don't like to hear people talk like this. So I just pray we are talking to the next president of Nigeria, if you ask me, or talking to Nigerians about the next set of elections. We should vote for people that can come out with a plan for the future. Not talk about where we are today. Yes, granted that we haven't done anything about oil, but what has this government done about oil today? Even when we're talking about the price of crude oil dropped in 2014 and 2015, what did you do about the price of refined product in Nigeria? There was nothing. The NTA tell you they were making profit. That would have been the window to deregulate the sector completely. So that Nigerians will not be buying refined product for 20 naira, petrol for 20 naira, diesel maybe 15 naira. So if he ever goes to 80 naira, it's not your fault because they benefited when the price of crude oil dropped. They benefited from the refined product because then you were importing. Today, NPC says they are importing 80 million liters per day. I can swear on anything that we are not consuming half of that. And that's again because of the kind of government we have today in Nigeria. But again, who carries the weight of all that? It's the poor Nigerian worker. That's expected to hobnob from point A to point B. We'll still have to pay children's school fees. We'll have to live in a bacha to survive. And I feel for them when I go to work. Like my brother here said, they will greet you more than 20 times. And you know, because they rely on that 1,000 naira or 500 that you will give them to take transfer back home. And if we do the right thing in this country, even if you say minimum wage is 30,000 naira, which again I think is an aberration. Wages are usually defined when you get, for casual workers really. For people that are on monthly salary, it shouldn't be wages. But again, that's discussion for another day. When you talk about all that, see somebody that pays transport to and fro. If you're in a system where you have mass transit, train and all to work, you pay little or nothing. You have the basic infrastructure. You have light, you have water, and education is basically free for your children. That happens in the Western world. So if your salary is 50,000 or 60,000 naira a month, you can still cope. But today, none of that is in existence. So that same worker is the one basic. Well, the truth, I don't think anybody even lives on that kind of wages in Nigeria anyway. And we talk about corruption every day. So maybe that's where we should even go to. Because nobody lives on that. We can lie to ourselves. Nobody lives on that. Your driver doesn't live on 50,000 naira a month. Neither does your cook or your gardener. They don't live on that. So if diesel is missing in your house, you know where to trace it to. You know? And if people are climbing your fence, you know where to trace it to. None of that's happening. So we need to squarely hold this government responsible and wait for the next one. We should be talking to the next government, really. If you ask me, I'm sure Nigerians are almost done with this government. We should be talking to the next government.
It still has
Because we don't want
we
to.
still have 2 years.
We don't want a planless one to come again and tell us that.
Honorable, as I mentioned earlier, government is a continuum, and part of the problem of today, we're actually, cultivated years back, right? So we're just it's like
the president is part of the problem. He is not the problem.
It's like a ripple effect.
Yes, because there was no foresight.
Let's keep it at
government before now to plan, and that's what everybody's complaining about today.
Let's keep the blame, for now, and let's discuss the issue in question this morning. So let's go to Dr. Timothy Olaole, Director General of the Nigerian Employers Consultative Association. Sir, let's get your own take or opening comment on the state of the Nigerian worker today.
Thank you very much. If I am to reflect, I will say that it is actually the Nigerian worker that deserves empathy. It's the Nigerian worker of today that we really need to feel their pain to appreciate their state. Every economic indices that has actually been reeled out that is adverse and negative, Nigerian workers are at the receiving end of it. Even where Nigerian workers earn more than 30,000 naira per month as minimum wage, say for instance in the private sector, employers still know that without plain denial that 30,000 or the minimum wage is insufficient for them to have meaningful life. And that is why many a times you discover that they introduce lots of schemes in the private sector to ensure that these workers deliver on productivity. You cannot expect industrial harmony and productivity and continue to treat your workers as if they mean nothing. And you cannot expect them to be truthful and to continue to be diligent at their work, not to be corrupt, and you continue to deprive them of the basic essentials that will make them live meaningfully. And that takes me to the situation of the worker in Nigeria today, vis-a-vis the employer. The experience is better in the private sector, but in the public sector, the worker is worse off. And why is this? Because their employment and their terms, benefits, and conditions are not premised on justice. Once justice is the overriding factor of actions by employers of labor, especially government as employer of labor, you discover that there will be industrial harmony in the public sector. Strikes, industrial disputes, industrial crisis will continue unabated because ordinarily there are laws of foundational premises upon which industrial relations supposed to be premised. One is social dialogue, which Comrade Ismail has spoken about. I will not belabor that matter. The second one is the principle of collective bargaining. It's as if in the public sector, you wait until there are issues and challenges or problems before you negotiate or discuss with your workers. This is an aberration. And the third, and I believe, which is very important as well, is the fact that when you are asking your workers to deliver on productivity, you owe them responsibility to meet your own part of the bargain as well. The question is, government as employer, have they made their own side of the bargain? Just as I usually say, that just as government will not default on servicing its debt to foreign funders or financiers, the same priority should be accorded the financial benefits as well as terms and conditions of service of Nigerian workers. If you know that there are consequences. Let me take for instance, it goes beyond even the monthly wages. For instance, the Employee Compensation Act provides that employers of labor, irrespective of whether you are in the public or private sector, should contribute a percentage of their payroll to the scheme to protect and compensate workers against occupational hazard. And failure to do that, there are consequences. Are workers in the public sector protected socially in this war, in this wise? The question is, you don't just chunk out pittance and say yes to fulfill righteousness take. 1% of your payroll is your 1% of your payroll. The question is, for employees in the public sector, if their lives actually are valuable to you as employer, definitely you will take it seriously. And because government is above the law, the provisions for sanctions or penalties for failure to do this is not meted out to government as employer. Whereas in the private sector, that is why you see consistently there is adherence to law, because there are consequences which are applied to them. The same thing pension scheme, which is some sort of protection for the workers to have meaningful life after gainful employment. You discover that even the contributory pension that we have migrated to, the question is government paying up to date for these workers? Is the worker benefiting from the penalties that are supposed to be meted out to company, to the employer, government in this instance, to ensure that they live up to expectations or with regards to their responsibility, as well as also pay damages, which is by way of compensation when they default, which is also part of the benefit of the workers? Of course, the answer is no, because government is above the law. And that is why there is lip service to, oh, we'll do this, we'll do that, and they enter into agreement, and you discover that those agreements are never respected because there are no consequences. Because people believe that the worker is inconsequential. So, for me, the worker in Nigeria today are at a very negative receiving end, especially in the public sector. And much is expected of them, but less is being given to them. And it's a pitiable situation. Granted, the government had issue of capacity with regards to funding. But when you look at every other budget heads, you discover that government needs to prioritize workers' welfare and benefit as the most fundamental and the most important capital that it needs to run the life of this country. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Timothy Olawale, for your opening comments, coming a bit late in the program. We're going to take a short break now. When we return from the break, we'll, of course, take up other matters that are related to the issue of the Nigerian worker.
Contemporary times require practical skills to remain competitive and relevant in your organization. Therefore, take advantage of NTA TV College short proficiency courses to sharpen your professional skills. Basic Broadcast Accounting and Auditing. Date 19th April to 30th April 2021. 2 weeks. Audio Engineering, Operations and Maintenance. Date 19th April to 23rd April 2021. 1 week. Protocol, Event Management and Public Relations. Date 3rd May to 14th May 2021. 2 weeks. Intermediate Camera Operation Techniques. Date 17th May to 11th June 2021. 4 weeks. The course fee for the 4-week course is 100,000 naira per participant. The fee for the 2-week course is 80,000 naira, while the course fee for the 1-week course is 40,000 naira only. Accommodation inclusive. Venue for all the courses is the serene and secure environment of NTA TV College near Old Government House, Rayfield, Jos. For more inquiries, please call 0803-314-4383 or 0806-980-9807. NTA TV College, Jos. Training you to be the best you want to be.
All right, you're welcome back. You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria, and we're live on NTA's network service. Let's return to the Honorable Minister of Labour and Employment. We do know that, of course, there are social protection issues around the welfare and well-being of the Nigerian worker. But there is also the very strongly held view that welfare and well-being ought also to be tied to productivity. And the view is that, in general, I don't know what the metrics are, there are serious issues about the productivity of the Nigerian worker. And it is only perhaps in the very few industries in the private sector that the employer gets value for money. That is to say that the productivity of the worker matches what the worker gets. People can point to the oil industry, for instance, and some of the multinational corporations. But in the public service, you ask yourself, state, federal, and local government, do workers put in 40 hours of work every week? 40 hours. That's to say 8 hours of work every day. And the view is that part of the major challenge that we are facing in Nigeria today is the low productivity of the Nigerian worker. The workers would argue, oh, we don't have facilities, oh, we don't have equipment, oh, we don't have motivation. But again, as Senator Hadija was saying, it's probably a chicken and egg situation, but it ought not to be so. What do we do in economies where people are paid on an hourly basis to say, as you know, it's $15 per hour for you to work? If you put in 1 hour of work, your productivity will be measured. But here, it appears to be the case of the Nigerian worker that you want maximum pay for minimum work. How do we change this orientation? And allied to that is this widely held view, MSMEs owners are suffering. You know, I'm sure you are aware of this, Honorable Minister, where people will tell you, Nigerian workers will be saying, now where person they work, now they chop. Which is a recipe for corruption and mismanagement of businesses set up by persons. What is your view to this? We talk about welfare, social protection, give us good pay, give us buses, give us mass transit, but do you put in the number of hours required, and then do you deliver on what you are supposed to deliver as a worker on a daily basis? You go home and say, yes, I have worked for today, and I'm happy that I'm earning what I'm earning. Honorable Minister.
Kingsley, I think we are celebrating workers and their day, and by extension today, where we have the holidays. So I don't know on a person's birthday whether you can spoil.
The birthday was 2 days ago, so these are matters arising from the birthday.
Well, my friend, the comrade, I think GS of NSC is here. He heard you loud and clear because you were asking your question and answering it. The truth of the matter is that the productivity of the Nigerian worker is not commensurate with the remunerations attached to the offices. And you see, events prove things for people. COVID-19 have come. You saw COVID-19. We're all here, 2020. You saw the protocols. We asked workers to go home, work from home. Some of you we don't even need your services for the time being. Level 1 to 12, 13 upwards can come. It was done for months. And even as we speak, it's still prevalent. The offices are working in the public service without those people at work. So, you see, it's not, if I say it as Labour Minister, they will say, oh, he has said again. No.
Okay, sir. Let's now discuss. Let's bring in the labor man. The labor man is here.
So what I want to say is that the chicken has come home to roost.
Yes.
The judgment is yours. And what I want also to say, this public service is over bloated.
All right.
It's over bloated.
All right.
And I leave it at that.
Yes.
The man, the NECA DG who spoke, talked to you, yes, Timothy. He knows it. But because government want to have a human face to everything, we keep the people. We're not doing redundancy. He, in the private sector, he knows the number of redundancy cases that come to me, to my table. From oil companies, food manufacturing companies, the banks. You see the banks lay off, and you see me fight them and say, no, this thing is not the way it should be for now, because we're in a dire straits. The bankers committee assisted me, because the bank says, oh, no, you can't tell us we're running losses. I said, no, you're not running losses. I have your books, your balance sheets, and what you declare as profits. But in the private sector, they do it without qualms. If you're not productive, they lay you off.
Comrade Ismail, please, let's hear from you.
Remember, at the very beginning, I spoke about the federal government as being a responsible employer. To some degree, the minister said the civil service is overbloated. I disagree. It is about how you deploy the resources that you have. We know that the expectation of Nigerian people from the public service is not being met. There's insecurity, we need more hands. Our roads are bad, we need more people. So there are several key areas of the economy that people really need to be redeployed and put to work. I think that cannot be the burden of the Nigerian worker. But I'm from an industrial background, and I know that the Nigerian worker makes enormous sacrifice. In fact, check with international companies. They rate our workforce very highly. I've had cause to interact with leadership of big companies, and they said, look, I've walked around the continent. I've seen the world fairly, and I can judge the performance of an average worker. The Nigerian worker is rated highly. This is a worker who works on a machine that is 40, and it keeps going, and it keeps producing. This is a worker who does 15, 16 hours in the private sector, and it keeps going with minimum income.
That's private sector. My question, I said, let's be, we're getting pressed for time. So
yeah, we're getting pressed for time, but that's the Nigerian worker. That's a Nigerian worker.
A Nigerian worker.
That's a Nigerian worker.
Not the Nigerian worker.
That's a Nigerian worker.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, that's a Nigerian worker. Yes. But I'm saying that spirit can be recreated everywhere. NTA here is if you like, a public enterprise. I see guys here, everybody busy at work. No idle hand. So it's not...
This is a precision industry, 24/7. So,
no, you can say precision industry, but Nigerian workers are here.
Yes.
So I've not seen a foreigner among the guys here. So the point I'm raising is about how government deploy the resources at its disposal.
Now,
it is not about having a
level of the Nigerian worker.
40% now of the budget is recurrent. Personnel cost. Personnel cost is taking nearly 1/3.
It's not sustainable.
But because President has been a working man all his life, he said, don't retrench. Don't retrench. Everything I have, I earned it as a worker, as a soldier, and I rose to become general. I was earning pay. What will these families do if we put these people out into the street? But don't worry, we are coming back to it, because I heard the honorable member, I heard all he said, and said that we are planless. They were there they were there for 18 years. PDP.
You were part of them. You were a governor under PDP.
Yes, and when you started misbehaving, I left you people. The ship was sinking. The ship was sinking, and I jumped.
Let's keep it at this. I'm bringing a Timothy Olaule in Lagos. The issue raised now by Kingsley has to do with the productivity level of the Nigerian worker, whether it is commensurate with his remunerations. Right. So now let us know how it is in the private sector, very briefly.
Thank you very much. Let me even start on the notes of the fact that productivity is a matter of what you feed into the system is what you get. Number one, the Nigerian worker will perform for as much as he feels he is also motivated to perform. The question is the issue of motivation. Are they motivated to put in their best? Number two, who sets the KPI? In the private sector, the employer ab initio sets key performance indices and says, you do this, you are appreciated this way, you do that, this is the compensation. And you are able to measure whether he is performing or not performing. And the employee is guided by those KPIs to say these are expectations from me. The question is, in the public sector, do we have it? If you don't set KPIs, if employees or workers in the public sector do not know what is expected of them, if it's just routine every day, you come, you go, you are working, then the expectation from you should be less. So what you feed into the system is what you get. That's number one. The second one is the point I made earlier, that look, even when it comes to compensation, the employee wants to be sure you really care about him before he puts everything on the line for you. So in the private sector, you know, the example that has been given by the oil and gas, it's not just the oil and gas, it's the entire private sector, especially the organized private sector. You plan from the very beginning to achieve results, and you also factored into your plan that the employee is an integral part of that larger plan. And you let it be known to the employee that, look, in achieving this objective, the corporate objective or corporate goal, these are expectations from you. And when you do your own part, these are my obligations to you as well. And failure to do your own part, these are the consequences, which are also premised on the rule of law. In other words, we have labor laws that guides our relationship. We also operate within that rule of law. So what I'm saying in essence is that in the public sector, there is the need for them to take learning points from the private sector. For government, one way or the other, through the Ministry of Labor and Employment, there is a department, in fact, there is an agency, National Productivity Center, that needs to advise and also set KPIs. I believe this should be part of their roles. For every job in the public sector, it's not only the senior jobs. They could go look at every job content. Number one, develop job content. Number two, set performance indices for each of the jobs is hard work. Then, I'm not even sure in the public sector, you give job descriptions to the employees. In the private sector, immediately you are being employed, one of the first documents that you get is the job description that says what your jobs will entail, what the task will be. I think that is the starting point. There are many missing gaps in the public sector which government really needs to work towards in putting in place.
All right, Dr. Timothy Olawale, thank you very much there for your prescriptions. Let's come back to the studios. Senator Ibrahim Adeja, what's your pitch on this with regard to boosting the productivity of the Nigerian worker, because productivity is actually the basis of economic growth and development ultimately. He's talked about what happens in the organized private sector, but for the public sector, some of the things that we see around, when we talk about poor maintenance culture of our public infrastructure and so on and so forth, these are the responsibilities of workers in the first instance, and even of their supervisors. I mean, you see a small crack on the road, and you look that way, that crack becomes a pothole, you look away, it becomes a crater, you look away, the road becomes impassable, and then they are bringing the supplementary appropriation to you to come and pass. What do we need to do to energize our workers? We know we've talked about welfare and well-being, but you must be productive, you must earn your pay, you must earn your keep.
Well, to be honest, if you look at what the minister said about the workforce being overbloated, once you start off from that perspective, then it's very difficult for you to implement most of the things that our guest from Lagos is saying. You know, you have a workplace that should normally engage maybe 20 people. You now have 120 people working there. I mean, how do you split the work job description? How do you split the key performance indices among those people? That is the starting point. But unfortunately, that's a very, very touchy subject, especially when you are talking to labor. Nigeria is moving aggressively towards creating a digital economy. And when we talk about digital economy, we're not talking about the private sector. It involves the public sector as well. Nigeria is also a signatory to the Open Government Partnership, which presupposes that in the next 2 years, 80% of government business should be online. That is to increase efficiency, that is to increase transparency and reduce corruption. Now, if we aggressively follow that, we might not meet that target. And if we look at the lessons learned from COVID, where despite the fact that virtually everybody was at home, things were moving. And in fact, a new normal has now been created where some people, you know, especially in the private sector, you know, are not going back to the old ways of doing business where everybody has to come to work. So I think in the light of this, we need to reorient our labor force. We need to really, really work on preparing them for what is about to come, preparing them. We cannot work in isolation. You know, and so I think really we need to start from that point. The fact that let's look at the workforce. You know, is it overbloated? If it is overbloated, what do we do about it? You know, Nigeria, the government cannot be the only employer of labor. You know, it cannot be a safety net for everybody.
Distinguished Senator, we have to pause you there. You know, Nigeria, don't forget that the population is increasing by the day. And if you start laying off workers because we have to digitize, then of course you are creating more problems. We're talking about insecurity today.
You are creating opportunities as a result of
joblessness. No, because you know, our issue this morning is on the welfare and well-being. Yes, of course, the performance indices is also very important here. But then the nation is increasing. Right? We're not industrialized yet. We're even at the verge of diversifying the economy, not yet diversified in the first place. So if you want to key into what is global because you are a nation, you want to catch up what they're doing without doing the fundamentals, then they're going to create a problem tomorrow. Because the issue of insecurity today that we're seeing today did not start today. It's about 10, 15 years ago. These are the errors of those days. That's what has manifested today in terms of insecurity. So right now, and I want to bring in this issue of National Assembly, the bill on the issue of exclusive legislation to the concurrent list. That is the issue of wages in Nigeria. Right. I want to speak on that. To speak to that, you know, Honorable Service Togu. And again, I want a response from the Labour. Please, very briefly.
Well, now, very briefly. I almost want to agree with the Honorable Minister just a bit. Maybe the bit I want to agree, maybe it's the bit of him that was in PDP, maybe. Yeah, but for him to appreciate the fact that he's coming up to say that the public sector is the employment there is bloated. I appreciate that honesty, and again, it's failure of government to plan that has led to that. Now we have said that from grade level 1 to 12 should sit at home and work, and they'll be home for over a year. And where's the platform for them to work? They're not working. They're just paying salaries. Yeah, we are not saying sack them, but look at the private sector. You don't do that in the private sector. In the private sector, they don't need you. Yeah, I know nobody wants to hear about retrenchment or redundancy, but there is an agreement To say, okay, you have so number of years left, maybe we'll give you part of this money. That money is not given to them to go and die. They can go and set up business. In private sector, they are trained to go ahead. Let's not go back to the oil company, even the banks. You are retiring or you are being sent away, they train you on anything you want to go into, and then they give you money. So when I keep hearing about you don't want to retrench and then you are paying people for doing nothing, that's part of the problem we are facing in this country. Now, why in government you just keep employing? It's not just the fact that they keep employing. What are the kind of people the kind of people they are even employing? When was the last time there was an advert in the papers to say the federal government or a ministry wants to employ people? All manner of people are there without skill, without set skill for the job they are paid to do. If you can clean out this, you can actually bring up productivity. I was arguing with Dr. Utomi once in Lagos Business School to say that the oil companies in Lagos are paying so much tax. That's why Lagos is doing well in terms of the IGRO. He said he doesn't think so. He thinks the people that are really making Lagos thick are those small boys moving around with laptops. And that's what the distinguished senator is saying. You can clean up the public sector to make it more productive, and they will create avenues for young people who can sit down at home with their laptop, not doing Yahoo, but will be creating jobs. Right. And we're paying taxes to the system. That's what I'm saying. The government needs to think out of the box. We don't want a government that will just come and say we are relying on oil. They should come and plan. So talking about, I'm in support of moving this minimum wage from exclusive to concurrent, because we are talking about devolution of power. The states should get more money to run their state. We should have a lean center, a lean federal government. A lean center. So that if the power is with the state, for crying out loud, they know how much they can pay. Like you have in the US, those states can say we will pay our workers 100,000 naira. They shouldn't be tied to 30 that's been negotiated in the center. Okay, yeah.
Still, in the US.
What's your response?
No, I will respond to that. But I think on the general question of productivity and overbloated civil service, you raised the point, which is very valid.
Yeah.
We need to employ the right people. We need to train them. We need to set the KPI. But that is not an accidental thing. That is something that we have to plan over time. There are also natural wastages. As people retire, as you try to bring them back, you bring quality people, you train quality people. The last one is about how do you deploy them. There are several segments of the economy that need people, that is lacking. There are several areas of the economy where there is bloating. So you can redistribute, retrain. So there are several ways to deal with the human power challenges. It's not as simplistic as throw away people, do this, do that. So I just felt I needed to say that. On the last one, on the question of minimum wage, I think it's a bill that is dead on arrival. And I think
what killed it?
Because it's something that is not very logical.
No.
So it just died on arrival, and I think we should just leave it there.
So where does devolution of power come?
Devolution of power, there are several things to devolve in Nigeria to run a proper and a true federation. Take the case of what is happening in Kaduna and in Kano, in Kebbi, in Zamfara, a few other states that are saying they can't pay minimum wage. They want to return back to 18,000. So that's a violation of the law. In fact, it's actual law breaking.
Yes. Honorable Minister, I want to respond to this.
Yes, I want to help Honorable Ojo, because he mentioned the United States and maybe other clients. We are 188 countries in the ILO. All of us, we have minimum wage. Minimum wage, people confuse it with wage negotiation. It's not. Wage negotiation, what you pay to your workers. No. This is what is the baseline, irreducible minimum that you pay the lowest person. So that you safeguard him from the vagaries of life and everything.
So you can pay higher.
You can pay higher. You can pay higher. Lagos State is paying higher. Edo, when Adam Soshimole was there, was paying higher.
They are still paying that now.
Rivers, I don't know about whether they're paying that now.
They don't owe.
So minimum wage doesn't mean you cannot pay higher, or you can. Where you can negotiate is what we call consequential adjustment. Hitherto, because of the minimum wage. So we have asked governors, state government, negotiate it with your state council. But this is the irreducible minimum. In America, they have minimum wage for the country. But states put their own for hours.
And that's really based on an hourly pay.
Hourly basis, yes.
And then
yes.
that 1 hour, you must work for it.
You work for it. So, in fact, America is moving their own from, I think, $10 to $15 an hour to $15 an hour. So, everybody, if you are in New York State, same, Arizona, California, but California will pay higher because they are richer. New York will pay higher. A lot of activities. Texas, oil places, and things like that.
All right.
But let me also go to what he said. No, he accused us of planlessness. No,
we are pressed for time. So, if we could make this 15 seconds.
The overbloatedness, we are tackling it at the President Committee on Wages. The President set up a committee. We are coming out with some mouth-watering offers to civil servants who want to exit earlier. We'll pay them something, arm them so that they can even go into farming. We want to move more people into farming. We're going to redistribute. There are some agencies that don't have enough. That's why we said don't recruit. There's an embargo on employment now, on recruitment, so that we can distribute first and then an exit plan for people to retire, get some money, and do not forget also, if you're even talking about, 30,000 is not much, the Constitution of Federal Republic of Nigeria permits public servants to do one additional job.
Which is farming.
Farming.
All right. So, Honorable Minister, we are pressed for time, and all the other guests would like to appreciate you. It's been a celebration of workers, but you know when you go to a birthday party, it's not all just dance, and people will discuss hard politics, people will discuss social issues, which is why we brought in some of those tough issues today. Honorable Sergio Ogun of the National House of Reps, representing Eastern, Northeast, and Southeast, would like to thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Distinguished Senator Ibrahim Hadeja, representing Jigawa Northeast Senatorial District and member Senate Committee on Labor, we appreciate your being with us.
To be here.
Comrade Ismail Bello, Acting General Secretary of the Nigerian Labour Congress, thank you for your thoughts. From Lagos, Dr. Timothy Olawale, Director General of NECA, that's the Employers Consultative Association. Always a delight having you on Good Morning Nigeria. And last but not the least, of course, Dr. Chris Ngige is the Honorable Minister of Labor and Employment, indefatigable. I'm sure when he leaves here now, he's going to be fighting with another union over negotiations. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us today. Once again, happy Workers' Day in arrears to Nigerian workers. Good Morning Nigeria is back tomorrow. Same time. That's why I said it's a precision industry. 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm Kingsley Osadolor. Have a nice day.
Kiri and Omaya, do have a great day.